Welcome back, folks, to Boss Economics World, the only place on the internet where we cut through the government's economic fairy tales and Wall Street's smoke and mirrors routine to deliver the raw, unfiltered truth about what's really tanking your wallet, your future, and, let's be honest, your faith in humanity. I'm your host, the no-nonsense, jargon-busting, fed-up economist you didn't know you needed, here to unpack the latest economic dumpster fire that's got Jamie Dimon sweating, businesses freezing, and the rest of us bracing for impact. Buckle up, because today we're diving headfirst into the mess that is stagflation, tariffs, and government mismanagement, and trust me, it's uglier than a central banker's inflation forecast. Let's start with the big news that's got everyone from TikTok traders to Wall Street suits clutching their pearls. Jamie Dimon, the head honcho at JPMorgan Chase, just dropped a bombshell in a Bloomberg interview from their Global China Summit in Shanghai. And no, it's not another corporate earnings beat or a self-congratulatory pat on the back. Dimon said, and I quote, "I can't rule out the US economy will fall into stagflation." Yeah, you heard that right, stagflation. That economic boogeyman from the 1970s where inflation runs hot, unemployment spikes, and growth stalls out like a beat-up Chevy on the side of the highway. Oh, and just to twist the knife, Dimon added, I don't agree that we're in a sweet spot. Sweet spot? Sweet spot? Who's out here peddling this delusion that the economy is doing just fine? Spoiler alert, it's the same clowns in Washington who've been steering this ship straight into an iceberg. Now, for those of you new to the Boss Economics World crew, stagflation isn't just a buzzword to throw around at cocktail parties to sound smart. It's a toxic cocktail of high inflation, high unemployment, and low growth, a nightmare scenario for policymakers, businesses, and, most importantly, you, the everyday American trying to afford groceries without taking out a second mortgage. And guess what? Dimon's not alone in sounding the alarm. The Federal Reserve itself, yes, the folks who print money and pretend they've got everything under control, admitted earlier this month, May 2025, that they're staring down an increased risk of confronting both higher inflation and unemployment. Translation, even the Fed knows we're in deep trouble, but they're too busy navel-gazing to do anything about it. Alright, let's break this down, Boss Economics World style, from the root causes to the surface-level chaos, because this mess didn't happen overnight. This is a masterclass in government mismanagement, corporate cowardice, and geopolitical brinkmanship, and we're all paying the price. First up, let's talk about the elephant in the room, the US government's addiction to spending money it doesn't have. Dimon specifically called out deficits as one of the huge risks facing the economy, and boy, is he right. According to the Congressional Budget Office, CBO, the U.S. federal deficit for fiscal year 2024 hit a jaw-dropping $1.8 trillion, yep, trillion with a T, and projections for 2025 are even worse, with estimates climbing to $2 trillion if current policies hold. That's not just a number, folks, that's a ticking time bomb. Every dollar of deficit spending is borrowed money, piling onto a national debt that's already ballooned to over $35 trillion as of mid-2025, for the U.S. Treasury Department. Now, here's where the government's fairy tale falls apart. They'll tell you deficit spending is stimulus to boost the economy, but let's call it what it is, a Ponzi scheme. They're borrowing from our kids' future to paper over their own incompetence today. And what do we have to show for it? Skyrocketing prices at the grocery store, a housing market that's pricing out anyone under 40, and an economy that's teetering on the edge of collapse. Oh, and don't forget the interest payments on that debt, nearly $1 trillion annually, according to the Peter G. Peterson Foundation, eating up funds that could have gone to infrastructure, education, or, not screwing over the middle class. Next up, let's zoom out to the geopolitical stage, where the US government's brilliant strategy of playing chicken with China is backfiring spectacularly. Dimon flagged geopolitics as another massive risk, and he's spot on. Earlier this month, the US and China agreed to a 90-day tariff truce to hammer out a new agreement. Sounds nice, right? Except analysts and investors are already warning that Trump's tariffs on China, some of which are still hovering at 25% on over $300 billion worth of goods, per the U.S. Trade Representative, will severely curtail Chinese exports even after the truce. Translation, this isn't a solution, it's a band-aid on a gunshot wound. Now, let's connect the dots. Tariffs sound tough, like we're sticking it to China, but who really pays the price? You do. A 2024 study by the National Bureau of Economic Research found that U.S. consumers and businesses bore over 90% of the cost of Trump-era tariffs through higher prices and reduced economic activity. And guess what? Those higher costs feed directly into inflation, which, as of May 2025, is still stubbornly high at 4.8%, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, well above the Fed's 2% target. Meanwhile, companies like Apple, Ford, and countless others are pausing expansion plans, scared stiff by the uncertainty of trade wars and tariff hikes. JPMorgan's own Troy Rohrbaugh, co-CEO of their commercial and investment bank, admitted this week that investment banking fees could drop by mid-teens compared to last year. That's Wall Street's way of saying, we're not making deals because everyone's too terrified to move. And now, the surface-level carnage that's got everyone from Main Street to Wall Street in a panic. Inflation is crushing everyday Americans, grocery prices are up 12% year-over-year, per the USDA, and rent has soared by 8.5%, according to Zillow's May 2025 data. Meanwhile, unemployment is creeping up, hitting 4.9% in April 2025, per the BLS, with economists warning it could climb to 6% by year-end if businesses keep hitting the brakes on hiring. And growth? Forget about it. The Commerce Department's latest GDP estimate for Q1 2025 came in at a measly 1.1% annualized, down from 2.6% the previous quarter. Put it all together, and you've got the perfect recipe for stagflation, a word that should send shivers down your spine. Now, let's talk about the Federal Reserve, because no Boss Economics World episode is complete without dragging the central bank for its role in this clown show. Dimon gave the Fed a polite pat on the back, saying they're doing the right thing to wait and see before deciding on monetary policy. Really, Jamie? Waiting and seeing while the economy burns? Here's the deal, the Fed has kept interest rates steady at 5.5% in 2025, according to their latest FOMC statement, despite inflation running hot and growth stalling out. Why? Because they're terrified of tipping the economy into a full-blown recession if they hike rates further, but they're also too chicken to cut rates and risk even worse inflation. This is what we call a policy trap, folks, and it's a direct result of the Fed's own incompetence. Remember, they spent years pumping trillions into the economy through quantitative easing, keeping rates at near zero, and telling us inflation was transitory. Well, guess what? That transitory inflation is now a permanent fixture, and the Fed's too paralyzed to fix it. Just look at the data. M2 money supply, a key measure of money in circulation, grew by 40% from 2020 to 2023, per the Federal Reserve, flooding the economy with cash and stoking the inflation fire. And now, they're stuck, with no good options left. But let's not let the government off the hook, because this is where the real satire kicks in. Trump's chaotic tariff announcements and his obsession with shrinking government agencies have turned Washington into a three-ring circus. Companies are pausing mergers and acquisitions, Wall Street's bread and butter, because no one knows what's coming next. Is it a new tariff? A government shutdown? A tweet storm that tanks the markets? Who knows? And don't even get me started on the fiscal side. The government's latest budget proposal, unveiled in March 2025, includes $6.8 trillion in spending, per the CBO, with no serious plan to rein in deficits or address the debt crisis. It's like watching a toddler play with a flamethrower in a room full of dynamite. So, what's the takeaway for you, the hardworking folks watching Boss Economics World? First, brace yourself, stagflation is a real threat, and it's going to hit your wallet hard. Second, don't trust the government or the Fed to save you, they're too busy covering their own backsides. And third, get loud. Demand accountability from your elected officials, because this mess is their doing. The data doesn't lie, deficits are out of control, tariffs are backfiring, and the Fed's asleep at the wheel. It's time for a reckoning. That's all for today, folks. If you're as fed up as I am, smash that like button, share this video, and leave a comment telling us how this economic circus is hitting you. And remember, here at Boss Economics World, we don't just report the news, we call out the nonsense. Until next time, keep your wallets tight and your skepticism sharper. Peace out.